Welcome back on the AM show. And just before I came on, I had to take a sip of water because guess what? Water is life. It regulates your body temperature. It keeps you alive and kicking. Well, Awake is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. And guess what? We have the perfect sizes for all occasions, 330 and 500 ml bottles to fit your pockets and bags, 750 ml for the heavy drinkers, and 1.5 liters for those who always want more. We have also introduced our special 19-liter jars for offices and homes. Now, all you need to do is stay awake with Awake Purified Drinking Water wherever you go. So come on, grab a bottle of Awake Water and get quality hydration. Awake Purified Drinking Water, one for life. Remember, for every bottle you purchase, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. It's produced by Akakpo. For bulk purchases, please call 0262 351 251. This advert is FDA approved. Now, you can buy 3 months or 12 months HD Plus subscription on your HD Plus decoder this football season and dial star 844 star 8 hash to enter the HD Orekodo Double promo. There are 1,700 rewards to be won, including trips for 3 couples to Dubai in December, a 65-inch TV or TVs, household appliances, and more. The promo is valid from now till the 5th of December 2022. Take advantage and make the most of it. On that note, let's settle for our conversation now as we talk our first big story. Have you ever wondered how the Ghana Statistical Service determines inflation per month? What is the permutation? How do the inflationary figures affect your personal budget? Well, today we bite into that with the head of Price Statistics Unit of the Ghana Statistical Service. I'm talking about Mr. John Foster Ajaho. He joins the conversation this morning. Mr. Ajaho, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, my brother. How are you doing?
Under the circumstances,
You're managing.
God is gracious.
That's good.
God is gracious. But, I mean, it's really good having you here. The other day, we had Professor Enim himself in the studio breaking down some of the bits for us. But let's start from the latest inflationary figures, even before we get into how you do the computation. What do they show? I hear 17 months back to back we've had inflation. What picture does that paint for our country?
Thank you, my brother. It doesn't paint a good picture to have about 17 months continued rise in inflation.
That's almost a year and a half.
That's about a year and a half.
1 month shy of a year and a half.
Yes, and it's not good because it shows that you are invariably impoverishing your people because then their purchasing power is reducing day in, day out. And if they're not having a corresponding pay rise, then it means they can't survive. And that's not too good for the economy.
And speaking of which, that would also bring into play the question of the minimum wage. Because when inflation, there is inflation or prices shoot up, it means that the value of what you have, your purchasing power parity, diminishes. Your purchasing power diminishes.
Yes.
And in recent times, I was just looking again at work by the Ghana Statistical Service, where you talk about the fact that about 1.1 million males have now, gone unemployed from the first quarter to the second quarter of the year. I think it's, is it the Upper East or Upper West region that has about 7 out of 10 males, because it's 69%, so that's basically 7 out of 10. But what I found curious, when you look at that same research, it points to the fact that people are now earning, in some cases, as little as 9 cedis and 90 pesos, or 9 pesos, so to speak, which is even less than 10 cedis, which is even less than the current minimum wage that will be rolled over. What does that mean? How bad is that? What picture, again, does that paint?
It's even more bad if you consider the fact that those who are earning that 10 cedis, for example, let's just rounding up 10 cedis, and you have inflation of about 40.4, in essence, they are losing about 4 cedis out of that 10. So invariably, there's about 5 cedis to spend. That's how bad it looks. 1, he's earning that low. 2, inflation is not too good for him. And so the real purchasing power of that money being given him is losing value about 4 cedis. So he only goes home with just about 5 cedis, 60 pesos to spend for the day. And you can imagine when you have prices of things skyrocketing, what that 5 cedis can do. And so when he's not able to feed well, he falls sick. And once the workforce is sick, the economy is sick. Production will be affected. So if you don't work on this early, it will have that spillover effect whereby we end up drifting towards, a shrinking economy. That's what we should fight against.
Is our economy shrinking as of now?
No, the good news is that the last quarter release from the GDP gives some hope.
Right.
We're just cautioning that we should not wait for the workforce to get sick,
Right.
to get, lose hope and then begin to stay off work, and then we get to a shrinking economy.
Because the economy thrives on
The workforce.
a healthy
Labor
workforce.
force.
So if there's no labor,
Exactly.
there's no economy, basically. Let's get to the bit about how you go about your permutations in terms of the last time Professor Enim was here, I think he mentioned, is it 303?
307 items.
307 items that you have in your basket. Yes. How do you go about it in terms of determining that this is the inflationary figure for this month, that month? How do you do it?
So every month we go to the market across all the regions.
Okay.
We have some selected shops, let me call it that way, so everybody to understand. Shop, we call it outlets,
Okay.
that we visit. And for those shops, we have items that we collect prices on. So within the first week of every month, we go there. Those that are not pre-packaged, like rice and like bottled water, as you mentioned in your intro, we go with scales
Okay.
to weigh the corresponding value of that. So for example, if you take cassava, in the market, they sell it in heaps. So if you say it's 10 cedis, we measure how heavy that,
because and unfortunately in our system we don't have like the European or American system where it's kilograms or grams. Exactly. Here it's
and then one thing the sellers do is that they can decide to maintain the price, the value price, but they'll be shrinking, they'll be reducing the weight.
Right.
So even
the Olunka, for example,
or even Paddy eats something like that.
Yeah.
So we go to make sure we account for all those changes. And then when we get those prices, we come back to office, we do the calculations, we look at the change, and then we come up with inflation.
So tell me, you speak of selected shops, yes, right? Are these shops that you go to all the time? Do you change the shops? Because maybe some shops would also give you slightly skewed figures, which may not be reflective of the generality, maybe looking at an average. How do you select these outlets?
Great. So we look at, in the selection, we look at representativeness. Okay. If the shop has the number of items that we are looking for, whether the people in the catchment area patronize it more, then we select it. Okay. But then changing, no, we don't change. We don't change because I always use this example. I happened to be around Medina some time ago looking for Tampico. There's a drink called Tampico.
Yes.
I went to the first shop and then it was expired. So then I dropped it.
Wow.
I moved to the next shop. The price was more than double. In the first shop, they were giving it to me at 5 cedis, and I know I usually buy it around 250 pesos. Okay. So when I moved about just less than a minute away, I got it at the normal price. So when we take you, we try to keep to you. Because if we change, as we have changed, for the example I gave, we have recorded over 50% increase in inflation, which was not due to real increase in the price, but because we changed the seller. So we keep to the person. And you mentioned the point that the price may be skewed. The good news about the inflation we do is that we don't look at the value price. We look at the change.
Okay.
So you may be selling the same product, let's say for 10 cedis. He is selling for 5 cedis. By the end of the day, we are looking at how your 10 cedis has increased and how his has increased the change, and not necessarily the real price.
And that brings me to an interesting point, because again, going back to, I get the statistic and how you're talking about the computation you do. Yesterday, I was sharing with you before we came on air that I usually purchase a certain type of blood tonic. I went to a place, and I think just about 2 weeks ago, I got it for 12 cedis and something, 12 cedis, 50 pesos or something like that. I go to a pharmacy yesterday, and it's 20 cedis. And I'm thinking, whoa. So I speak to the attendant and go like, but I got this for 12 cedis and it wasn't that same place though. Sure. It was a different place. So I felt, look, let me go to another place that I think, when I got there, it was 38 cedis. It was almost, what? So 38, it's even more than
50%.
Exactly.
Difference.
Almost twice the price.
Yes.
And I was stunned. So when you have such comparatives, how do you try to get out that element of distortion? How do you do it?
So the good news is that, as I said, so for example, as you say, you have this shop that you normally purchase from.
Yes.
And we prefer that we keep to that shop.
Right.
So he would have said, okay, the last time you bought was 12 cedis. Now it's, let's say, 26 cedis.
Right.
But remember, when you move to the other shop, he was selling more than what your normal shop.
Yeah.
So, you see,
so an 8 CD difference between where I bought it 2 weeks ago and now. And in the other case, it's about, what, 20-something CDs difference.
So if we were going to pick from the other one, who is selling at that high, would have kept to him, and yes, his price is high. But you see, the other thing I want to bring viewers' attention to is the fact that I think the president even mentioned that his speech, people don't understand. What he said, people are profiteering.
Right.
So you see, the same product, you got it 2060 somewhere, another person is selling it at 30 something.
Yeah.
Same product.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the same supplier who is giving to them.
Yeah.
Why would he sell it?
But someone may tell you it is the stock. Maybe this person bought it, it's been there for maybe a month, and this person just got stock, let's say, a few days ago, and the price changes have affected them.
Well, that could be true.
I remember I bought a certain drug for about 300 CDs just recently. And I felt, whoa. I went to another place, it was less than 200.
Right.
But within a short while, I went to that place where it was less than 200.
The price has changed.
And now they had got new stock, and I think there it was even 400 CDs. So you see, these are the things that unsettle people.
I agree, because I mean, if indeed you had an old stock and you haven't gone to the market to see what has changed, you still be selling at that low price.
Yeah.
Only when you go to the market that you realize things have gone up, you come increase. That I agree with you. But certainly we cannot agree with the fact that people are also playing around the situation we find ourselves in and are arbitrarily increasing prices. I mean, we have a lot of examples to share. And I think this is what we all have to, be patriotic and help all of us get out of the situation. Because if you think about the money, the profit we make, COVID time, this thing started from the COVID time. When people started increasing prices.
Right.
Because
right.
we're in a difficult
even a common face mask.
Common face mask. It went up to 50 cedis. And that thing has stayed on up to 9. That's what we are fixing. People are still, they write out, the economy is hard, things are expensive. Let me be fast, let me make money before it normalizes. I mean, that cannot help all of us. We should all be patriotic enough, because we're going to be doing this for long if we all don't change our attitude.
Just how long do you suspect we could be in this? Because, I mean, look, I am reflecting the ordinary Ghanaian. We are all praying that we'll get out of this very quickly, because, look, it's not helping anybody. Even with fuel prices where they stand now, after diesel has gone, lowered by about 3 CDs, petrol by 2 CDs. Still, the last time I went to the pump, Charlie,
it's so high.
It's absurd.
For me, the hope, and I'm smiling because initially I was scared. I mean, I was not seeing end in sight. But now that we are seeing relative stability at the exchange market, we are seeing some reduction from the commodity price. When I was listening to you this morning, I heard that crude prices at the world market had reduced a little.
Right.
And then we saw some marginal decrease in our pump prices. If these things work out well for us, then maybe before the year ends, we can begin to breathe some sign of relief.
Just to say briefly, I know I'm widening the scope of the conversation, but as you speak of the exchange rate, for example, what is the reality there? I conducted a cursory, survey over the weekend. I just ran some checks. Look, out there, people are... The Bank of Ghana rate is around 13 cities, just around 13 cities, 13.08, 13.10, 13.15. People are not, outside of the banks, and even the banks mostly will tell you that if you wanted foreign currency, you can't just, if you were traveling or something, that's when they would give you that. Yeah. And now also we know about the central bank, others clamping down on those who are importing certain goods that supposedly we should be producing here, which we are not yet producing en masse. But the exchange rate, is it realistic? Out there, just this weekend, I interacted with a number of people. The exchange rate is, you will not get anything less than 14.50. That is if you are selling, for example, the dollar. If you were buying it, it would be something else.
Yeah. For us, I think we are happy because we have a series of discussions with government, and some of the policies, that we preferred, we've seen it be implemented.
Like what? Like which ones?
Like the control in the dealing in dollar. And the bank has taken up seriously.
Okay. Because
that is bringing the instability at the exchange rate, the forex market. And once there's no stability, believe it or not, we have more than 50% of the items that we have in the basket to be imported.
Right.
So once the exchange rate is not stable and keeps increasing, it affects the imported price.
Right.
And so
that's why imported inflation is so high.
It's always high.
Right.
So we really commend the central bank and government for the steps they're taking. We need to really sanitize our exchange rate market, because otherwise we keep on having problems with the inflation. You're right to say that you can't probably go somewhere it's 15, some even go beyond 15.
Beyond that, right. But how exactly do we do that? How do we sanitize it? I know that's not your, but what do we do realistically?
You know, if you even go to some other African countries, you can't just walk to any place and say you're buying dollars.
True.
You need it's formal. You need to go with your passport, and it's regulated. And I think another thing, I was speaking to a friend. Even as the bank is doing this at the open market, it's fine. We should also be able to put our hands on our commercial banks. Some of them get the sense that dollars are being moved out of Ghana to our neighboring countries. You go to some countries that surround us, it is difficult to get dollar, even from the formal markets. So the business people come down here through their commercial banks, and they carry the dollars away. And so when the demand exceeds supply, we are always having the challenge of the depreciation. So even as they're changing the Goro boys in Mokola, Tudu, and wherever, I think they should also put their eye on we should be able to monitor who is taking what and for what. Now they're saying that they're not giving dollar support to non-essential imports. So we should be able to measure that if you are giving over $1 million to a businessman from where, importing what. Once we're able to control the depreciation, trust me, we'll be jumping to hallelujah in the next few months.
I think apart from any fiscal issues that we could look at, and maybe, yes, we know that the responsibility lies with the Bank of Ghana and the Finance Ministry shared in terms of propping up our currency. Exactly. But when it comes to the black market, which also plays a crucial role, yes. They are everywhere.
Yeah.
I used to joke that now I don't think it's still there, but there's a popular police station in Accra, right in the central district,
I know that place,
where you would see them right next to a police station.
Holding it.
I always found that so curious, like hilarious, basically. They are right there in front of the police station. I don't know whether I don't think I've seen them.
I think that they're running away because the bank is chasing them.
Right. But can we do away with black marketeering, especially when the OMCs, for example, the oil marketing companies, we are not able to give them, we're just giving them a quarter or less of what they need in terms of foreign currency to bring in crude, processed, and all of that. And then again, now that we are talking about those non-essential inputs and cutting off, dollars for these traders, isn't that just going to prop up the black market and just create a reverse of what we want to see?
You know, see, for me, the good news I say in fighting the black market issue is that, you are right to say that we certainly cannot completely eradicate them. But when we minimize their activity, you see, what they do is that they create artificial shortage.
Right.
When they get the dollars, they hoard it. So when the demand is high, the price goes up, then they come and sell. So when you're able to eliminate them, then you can have control over the rates. And that's why you all have to commend the bank for what they are doing. They should continue. Once you minimize their activity, we'll be able to have some stability at the first front.
Let's get back to the bit about inflation and how it's measured and all of that. So we've spoken about the 307 items in the basket. We've spoken about your outlets. What then happens month on month? So when do you conduct this? At the tail end of a month and at the start of the new month? How do you go about it?
At the beginning of the month. So the first week of the month, we deploy our price collectors to the markets.
Okay.
They spend between 5 and 8 days collecting the prices. And then when they bring it, they do validation to make sure the prices they've taken are correct. Then it's transmitted to HQ, where we have to do the computation to make sure it follows our standards, and then we publish it in the second week of the month. So when we publish inflation for this month, it's the inflation for the previous month.
The previous month. When you look at the inflation so far this year, from January till now, let's forget about the 17-month cycle. Let's look at January to now, 11 months. What is the tail of the tape? What does it events? What does it show?
It shows that there is one shortage of, let me put it away, essential commodities, especially food items. And that's how you see the food inflation going so high. And I was shocked to be told that even goods, we import it from our neighboring countries.
Oh yeah, Burkina Faso, Mali, and the rest.
We're importing from our neighboring countries. Onions. So we need to do something. We need to do, in fact, we use the word grow what we eat and eat what we grow. Right. Domestication. We have the farmland. So it's so that, we can't feed, and people cannot eat, 3 square meters, we call it, because food inflation is going up. Right. So we need to really avail our minds to this and make sure we produce enough, because it shows that there's shortages on the market. That's the prices are going up. We don't have buffer stocks.
That paints an interesting picture because the Agric Ministry will tell us something different, that we in fact have a whole lot more. And recently you've seen them selling at the Agric Ministry. But it definitely shows when Mr. President said in that address that we need, an import substitution strategy, that a lot of these, I hear there are some juicy types of tomatoes, for example, that we import from Burkina Faso. Yeah. How come over these years and decades we've not been able to? So those raise a lot of questions. How come we bring in so many? Yes, there are entities here that produce toothpicks, but a lot of it is imported. From China and other places. Even the masks we use. So you ask yourself, initially when that drive started, when COVID and we are producing homegrown masks, what has happened to that enterprise? But so just a quick step back. When you speak about the store, the outlets that you go to, do you go to markets as well? Are these just supermarkets and all of that? What is the range? Do you target markets? Do you go to a makola? Do you go to how do you do it?
So we've done a study that shows us where majority of the people purchase their items, and that is the markets that you're talking about: the makola, the Atibubu, the Agogo market, the whole market. So majority of our outlets are in the open market. Then we have shops. We have the malls you mentioned, the supermarket. So we have a cross section of all these shops. The open, the shed, those who open, sell the open, who don't not in any shop, not in any room, we go to them. Those who go have in the like the schools we go, the filling station we go. So it's a cross section of all the outlets that we buy things from. Representative.
Okay, so it's wholly representative.
It's wholly representative.
Let's move on now to talk about how all of this, the inflationary figures, 40.4 as of October. How does that impact the ordinary Ghanaian? I mean, what is the meaning of that to the ordinary Ghanaian, looking at the average person and their earnings? What does it mean?
So what I basically say always in simple terms is that inflation is a thief, it's an armed robber. So you're assuming your salary is 1,000 cedis. If inflation is 40.4, what it basically means is that that thief is stealing 440
Ghana cedis.
Ghana cedis from you.
Wow.
So in essence, you are left with
560.
If you want to live what you were doing a year ago, that's what it means. You have just about 500 to go back to your a year ago life.
Ghana, that is an very apt analysis of the situation. So according to Mr. Ajaho, if you earn 1,000 cedis, and it makes a lot of sense, with inflation hovering around 40.4%, it basically means 440 cedis have been taken away from you by inflation. So when you hit the market, your 1,000 cedis is now actually worth about 560 Ghana cedis. That is startling.
Yeah, very startling. So if a year ago I was buying, the 1,000 could buy me my kenke, I'll be able to buy trotro and maybe take off my medication. Now, I can't, with this inflation and still the same amount of money, I can't go back to that life. I may not be able to take my medication. What happens? I'm going to die.
Wow.
I may not be able to pay my rent. I'll be evicted from my room, sleep outside. That's how serious it is. And that's how we are all trying to talk about this so we see how we can remedy the situation.
We also know that there is individual inflation because it depends on what you purchase.
Yes.
So if someone is purchasing, Kofi Brookman every day, it doesn't mean I love Kofi Brookman.
I love it too.
But if someone decides to feed on that for an entire month, that person's budget would be different from someone who wants to have lunch at X restaurant or Y place. So definitely paint a picture for us how in these times we can manage that. And we also know you have an app as the Ghana Statistical Service to measure inflation. Tell us a bit about that as well.
So you see, as you rightly said, inflation affects individuals differently. In fact, even the regions, it affects them differently. So depending on what you buy, if you decide to go for those Lazarus items, whose prices are changing rapidly over time, then you're in trouble. So you need to make some adjustments so that you know that, okay, if you want to buy 3-piece suits and now that's costing about 1,500, you can just look at it, no, maybe let me hold on a while.
Right.
Let me go with my traditional shirt.
Right.
For the next 2 months, who has lower inflation, and you'll be able to survive. And that's how we can develop the app. So people can relate. You do the permutations. No, maybe you have to stop taking taxis. Maybe reduce the taxi taking, but not to stop though. And then maybe do more of walking and trotro. So I don't get heart hit. If I'm driving my 4x4 that consumes a lot of diesel or petrol, and now the pump price is up, I think I have to pack it. So you can do, using the app, you
If
can...
I have a smaller car, let me use it.
Or even join the commercial vehicle, join the taxi,
Right.
join the Uber, join
Right.
the truck.
Right.
Until we are out of the woods, and then you can go back to your luxurious life. Like you said, if I eat fried rice a lot with chicken and French fries, why not me eat my coffee bukuma, eat my konkontemi, my banku and my fufu,
Yeah.
which may probably not impact so much. It depends on we call something weight. How important that item is in your basket.
Right.
And then its effect on your inflation. So we really need to make adjustments here and there at this time.
Where it gets complicated is where, for example, people have to undergo chemotherapy or dialysis or get insulin shots. Those ones are out of your hands. I have, in one of our Living Standard series, my colleague, Mamiesi Thompson, spoke about how some people, I think there was this lady at the University of Ghana who was rationing her insulin shots. And that is dangerous. It's life-threatening. So when the issue of medicine comes in, that is where, can you say, oh, maybe today I'll not take the pills for my hypertension, but tomorrow I'll do this, when you know that it should be regular. So those are some of the complications for people. There's nothing you can do about that.
My brother, that's the sad aspect of the situation we find ourselves in. As rightly said, there are some, commodities or some needs of the individual that you cannot substitute. Like health care, chemotherapy. Substitute for what? And the most painful thing is that when the price is so high and the person cannot afford, he stays off it.
Yeah.
Eventually, we are saying the person should die.
Yeah.
And that's why we're always saying that, look, we need to find a way out of this in the shortest possible time. I mean, at first, about the example you gave, the person needs to survive. He has no option. And yet the thing is being priced out of his control. We really need to do something.
Today, for example, we're talking about HIV/AIDS, which is spiraling a bit out of control and all of that. Imagine someone who has to get antiretrovirals. I know basically there are freebies in there, but they will need other things to ensure that they don't retrogress and the virus doesn't take over. If they don't have the means, it means we're basically telling them, Sebe, Kufioku.
Let me even bring your mind to something. I mean, some of the effects of this inflation we're talking about. I mean, people can disagree with me though, but you realize that there's a lot of people out there who catch this virus by virtue of poverty. So he needs to feed. I mean, like you were talking about somebody who needs to survive. And then he thinks that, especially for the female part, I'm sorry to use that example,
right.
The only way is probably to go to a man, and then the man take advantage of her vulnerability, and then in the end, they get infected with this. So that's why we need to grow an economy where, I mean, people can be comfortable.
Right.
Then some of these things, see, otherwise we can be doing well, doing the campaign, but fight against HIV. But you see, the cause, if it's not tackled, you still
positive factors. Right. That's a crucial point you make there. But that also reflects. Today I was reading Jeff Bezos, I think the second or third wealthiest man on the planet, founder of Amazon, was actually saying that, look, in the season in the United States and beyond, don't go buying the cars and the big screen TVs and all of that. Because we could be in for a recession. He's talking about the United States. But of course, what happens in the United States often has a trickle-down effect on the rest of the world, a spiral effect. And I found that interesting because his business thrives on packaging and selling these items. Yet he is saying, Charlie, we for slow down.
No, but there are honest people in the world. There are people that are realistic. And he's seeing what is happening to them. And you see, and that was the point I was making too. This is not the time to live luxurious life. This is a time for us to manage and make sure we just only depend on the essentials, survival of the fittest. So this is not the time to go and buy a 90-inch television and buy the 6-piece, the 3-piece suite and all that. You need to make adjustments because if, for example, like you said, we went into recession, you can't even watch that television. All that you may need at that time is water and food. So this is the time to make savings to prepare for the eventuality. That's what he was trying to advise us.
Let's look at another angle of this whole inflationary conversation. And after that, I'll bring it back home. In the United States, part of why we've seen all the inflation that we see across the world is that the dollar has been very strong.
Yeah.
Very strong.
Yeah.
Is it bullish as those on there? And We've also seen that, I mean, it's appreciated by about 15%. Recently, it lost about 4 percentage points. So we see a bit of decline in there, stability. Some economists predicted stagflation, stagnation and inflation in the US, and eventually a recession. But with what we are seeing now, with the dollar,
and
the appreciation of other currencies, because now the Great British Pound has appreciated a bit, the euro is back to
stability.
Well, it's also appreciated by a bit, marginally.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? A weaker dollar. What does that mean? One, for the Ghana cedi's stability. Two, for the cost of borrowing, especially for the business community. I'm not talking about Ghana, I'm talking about the business community. And three, general inflation.
So if the dollar, somebody's problem becomes your happiness, eh? If the dollar is weakening, it helps other currencies to gain strength. And that's why we are seeing some stability in our currency. So if you're able to do other things that will help our cedi appreciate, then it gives us that purchasing power, the strong power, to be able to control inflation.
Are we doing those things?
I think they're doing. Example is what I told you about the bank's effort to clean the forex market.
Right.
So when we do all those things, then our city will appreciate. Of course, then the prices will come down, inflation will lower. So yes, it's not good for America to suffer the depreciation, though, but I think it's good for us.
What we can't guarantee, though, because the Federal Reserve, is the one that hikes the rates and all of that, the cost of borrowing. They've not shown signs. In fact, it's been still hawkish when you listen to some of their representatives speak. Economists are hoping that they would, see this as a sort of peak and not hike rates further. Because if they do, the dollar will get stronger again, and currencies like ours will be the ones suffering. Because if you look at it globally, it is weaker economies like ours that bear the brunt of those effects.
That is why policymakers should not wait. Once we are seeing those signals, we take advantage. We also put our policy in place. You see, often than not, the weaker countries tend to wait and see what happens in America and the Western world before they act. I think we
are not proactive, eh?
We should be proactive. We should be a step ahead too. So as you give the example, you ask yourself, okay, if the Fed begin to show up more to strengthen the dollar, what will be the effect on me? Okay, what will the plan B? So we should also be putting the permutation down and not just wait. It's okay, it's a dollar, it's a global dynamics, we have nothing to do. No. We've got to do something.
So in terms of these permutations we're looking at, what I started talking about, inflation 40.4%, and that picture you painted for us, if you're earning 1,000 cedis, with inflation at 40.4%, it means you are losing 440 cedis. You are left with 560 cedis to do the same thing that you were doing a year ago. Yeah. And how is that possible? It means you must do some to stay, to just stay, not to go ahead. You must run a lot just to stay where you
maintain your previous year life. So you're not even growing.
What then would you say ordinary Ghanaians should be looking at and doing beyond maybe cutting down spending? Because you will even be forced to cut down the spending because you don't have the funds anyway. What other alternatives are moving from central government and coming to the individual now? What do people do? What should people be doing?
So this is where we need to work more. That's what that means. I mean, we need to increase our productivity. And then so once you grow or you work more, you might earn more income to make room for the losses.
So extra jobs.
Extra jobs. And then those who do their individual work, hard work. People who do their own work, farming. Somebody goes to farm 8 o'clock, by 9, 10, he's back. No, spend more time, increase the acreage. So the yield goes up and then you can get more money. You see, we need to make room for the loss, the one that has been stolen by inflation, and then we can move forward. So now at this time we need to avoid the profligate spending, cut unnecessary expenditure, but then increase productivity, and we'll be good to go.
Let me ask you this. So as we go to the IMF, for example, we all know 3 billion is what we are looking for. And some would say that we have no business being here because 3 billion is not a sum that we, as a country,
we cannot afford.
We cannot afford. But we know about the wastage. The wastage in terms of corruption alone is more than that sum of money. In terms of the Auditor General's reports and what they show is more than that money. But we've landed at the doorstep of the IMF. In terms of securing a deal, how crucial is the Ghana Statistical Service? Because you have all the data. How crucial is your role, and what role have you played in that so far? Have you played a role?
A lot. Like you rightly said, the fund depends on data. to know where this country is and then the way forward.
Right.
They just left our office, I think about 2 weeks ago. I was with them, they were with me to look at my data, go through the processes and make sure it is correct. And so we give them the data, we give government the data, they find the data to make sure they know what the situation, diagnose the condition well and profile the best solution. So you're very critical, very crucial in this discussion.
And so
they can't bypass us to do anything.
They can't bypass.
Government cannot bypass us because they need the data to inform the next step.
And so this data, what kinds of data are we looking at that,
So
that you furnish, the IMF with?
Basically, from our side, they're looking at two key macroeconomic indicators: the inflation and the GDP.
Right.
How the economy is growing. So these are the two that they use to do their projections, and that's why they come out to say maybe our debt level is not sustainable, it's sustainable, and we can get out of the root problem in the next month or so. These are the two data that they use in arriving at those decisions.
Before we wrap the conversation, before we do the final leg of what your last words and final propositions would be, I'm going to run this by you. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to, because I don't want to do anything that would. But I'm bringing it up for good reason. I'm sure you followed the ad hoc committee's work in Parliament concerning Ken Ofori-Atta, our finance minister. Some have said, I'll not go to the accusations, the 7-point list and what has happened there. But some have said that in terms of an IMF deal, sometimes your arrowhead is important. Who is leading the conversation? People say the finance minister may be leading the conversation is not the best. I just read in the Daily Guide this morning, Dr. Makesibe Yeboah, former chair of the Finance Committee of Parliament, saying that we should let, the finance minister read the budgets, at least. Do you have a take on this? Like I said, you don't, if you feel uncomfortable.
No, in fact, I share my opinion.
Go with.
As a typical Ghanaian, there's something that we always say. The devil,
is better than the angel you don't.
So yes, we may have all those problems against the finance minister. I don't disprove that. But we don't know what the next person is going to bring to the table.
Interestingly, the same Dr. Makesibe Yeboah has had his name come up in terms of being like a likely replacement.
Oh, okay. But for me, the fear of the unknown is what I would say we should tread cautiously. Because we have seen his performance, we've seen and we have all this against him. But probably he may be better than maybe the one that is coming. I'm not by this saying he's the one I want.
Right.
But I'm just being curious and careful about the one that probably may come and how his performance will be. Probably to do worse.
Right. Is it rational to keep him just on the back of the fact that, well, he has superintended all of this, so maybe we should let him conclude it, and then when things stabilize, we can get someone else. Is it rational?
You see, I think we also have to be a bit realistic, to be very frank with you. We should understand the dynamics. It's not only Ghana. We have global challenges. Even the best countries, the Western world, are suffering. It's not the fault of probably their leadership. So if, as you rightly said, for 6 years, he's been through it, COVID, he's seen it, probably there are some plans that he's put in there with his team. And so if he said, yeah, things are hard now, so quickly let's get him out. And then somebody comes in, he doesn't really know where we've come from and all the dynamics. That's why I think I have a problem. To be very frank with you.
Well, interesting thoughts you've shared there, and at least I am grateful that you decided to share your thoughts on that. What would be your concluding words, Mr. Agyahor, as we have spoken about inflation, the real impact on the ordinary Ghanaian, where we find ourselves financially as a country? And I think maybe before your final words, you didn't tell us a bit about the app. You started and then
yes.
just before you conclude.
Yes. So if you go to our website, probably I should have it on screen.
So Ghana Statistical Service
website.
Right.
Then there's an app there called Personal Inflation Calculator. Once you log onto that, you have the items that we spend on. So you can enter your expenditure. So maybe a month you are spending 100 cedis on, let's say, transport, you are spending 50 on your accommodation. You put in it will guide you to see how inflation is affecting you personally. And then you can make your substitutions. So it's something that we encourage people to go. It's a new app, yes, we are still testing it, but to give an idea of how you are relating to inflation, and then you make this necessary adjustment as needed.
Well, Mr. Jaho, we are immensely grateful that you took the time to join us with your thoughts this morning. And I think this should continue. It shouldn't be. We're glad that Professor Enim, whenever we call on him, he shows up, and you have done same. I think it would be good. I've learned a lot today, and I'm sure many people watching us have done so too. So maybe every now and then, GSS, and so we can all learn, and also maybe some of the tips you share, we can all cut our coats according to our cloth. Thank you so much. Mr.
Thank you for having me.
And that is John Foster, Jaho, Head Price Statistics Unit of the Ghana Statistical Service. Well, that's only the first leg of the conversation we've had. There's been a spike in HIV cases in Ghana this year, some 24,000. What exactly is happening? Why are we here? And what is the way forward? More conversations coming up on the AM show. Do stay.